Had to get back in my seat. Okay, we're live on Facebook. So I was uh, not instructed, I was offered an opportunity to use different language. Normally, we'd be starting the first show of the new year saying Happy New Year. But we know that it's not happy for everyone. We know that there is a lot of discontent in this country. We know that there are things moving that are not happy. And so we'll say, and I'll thank Minister Sabor for offering this. We'll say we wish you peace. We wish peace for our people. We wish peace for the world. And I wish, the kind of peace that comes only with justice. So my name is Melina Abdullah. I'm co-founder of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. I'm also co-director of Black Lives Matter Grassroots, which is the on-the-ground organizing that Black Lives Matter does globally. I'm a professor of Pan-African Studies and a mama of 3 children and a daughter of Oakland. I'm saying that because my guests on today's show are all from my hometown. And normally on January 1st, I would be with the family of Oscar Grant because that is Oscar Grant Day in Oakland. And every year, my family and I are in Oakland, and normally were it not a pandemic, we'd all be together at the Oscar Grant station, lifting up the name of Oscar Grant. And so in just a moment, I'm going to introduce our guests for This Is Not a Drill. We want to remind you that This Is Not a Drill is really our political education platform for Black Lives Matter. And there's a lot moving. Nobody is unaware of what's happened in this country, what happened in Washington, D.C. at the Capitol yesterday. We will be drawing some comparisons and having some conversation around how the white supremacist terrorists that attempted a coup at the White House were treated by law enforcement, were treated by those who hold power in this country, and who were empowered in their absolutely violent actions, while Black folks are routinely dehumanized, routinely targeted, and routinely mistreated, and have our lives stolen with regularity, just for living our lives. And so we'll have some of that conversation, along with a deep conversation about the continued call for justice in the name of Oscar Grant. Before we get to that conversation, and before I introduce our guests, I want to lift up that there's a lot moving, that Black Lives Matter is continuing to remember that we're living through a global health pandemic with an economic fallout that disproportionately impacts the lives of Black people. So we actually began partnering in 2014 with the Nation of Islam. And I don't know if you remember this, Minister Sabor, but in 2014, we were invited by the nation to partner around making sure that we supported Black businesses. And in 2014, which was also the year that Brother John Crawford was killed inside a Walmart store, we began recognizing, we began to uplift the relationship between white supremacist capitalism and police violence. And so every year since then, from what they call Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, through January 1st, we've engaged in something called Black Xmas. And the tenets of Black Xmas are to build Black, buy Black, and bank Black. We want to withdraw our dollars from the systems, from the corporations, from the companies, from the institutions that really feed violence against Black people, that profit from our deaths. And we want to make sure that we invest in Black businesses that are of collective benefit to the Black community. So we had on, I think our second to the last show of 2020, we talked about the importance of Black Xmas. We spoke with the CEO of One United Bank. We spoke with Nipsey Hussle's business partner, David Gross, and we talked about the importance of investing in Black community. We're not going to stop just because we have passed January 1st. And so we are moving to something called verified Black owned. We know that already, at least in Los Angeles, 40% of Black owned businesses have shut down as a result of the economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. And so we're saying we're going to do all we can to support Black owned businesses, to again, build Black, bank Black, and buy Black. And so we're saying buy Black by patronizing Black owned businesses every Thursday to coincide with this program. We're highlighting one Black owned business of the day. And so right now we are highlighting Beauty Pro LA. Beauty Pro LA. I'm gonna lift up my fingernails. This is what Beauty Pro does. Many of you cannot get into manicurist because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the requirements, the shutdown requirements. Well, Beauty Pro LA is a Black owned manicurist that sees you individually, so they're able to comply with the COVID-19 requirements and the business shutdowns, but they need our help. So if you need your nails done, make sure that you go to Eleni at Beauty Pro LA and get your nails done. Everything is posted. We're posting every single Thursday on our Instagram page, which is BLM Los Angeles. We're also saying that when we say build Black, that means build Black community. What we saw yesterday is that police absolutely don't keep us safe. We keep us safe. And so this Sunday is the Black Lives Matter Los Angeles general meeting. And because we are doing it in Facebook and Zoom format, everyone all over the world can join us by going to facebook.com/BLMLA, which is the platform you're currently on. Join us on Sunday at 7 p.m. when we'll be talking about how to build community safety practices and the principle of us keeping us safe. We keep us safe. So let's move into the conversation for tonight. I am overwhelmed and really encouraged by this tremendous panel that we've been engaging collectively in struggle together for, I guess it's been, I'm terrible at math, 12 years. Is it 12 years? 12 years since BART police in Oakland stole the life of Oscar Grant. And many of you know the story of Oscar Grant. Many of you have watched the film about his life, Fruitvale Station. Many of you know the force that Sister Wanda Johnson and Uncle Bobby have been in the call to end police violence, to end state-sanctioned violence. I'm grateful to have been in community with you all for the last 12 years, along with Minister Abdul Sabur Muhammad, minister in the Nation of Islam, and one of the leaders, one of the leading advocates for this entire time up in Oakland, and of course, beyond Oakland and beyond the call for justice in the name of Oscar Grant. He's been a force calling for justice. And then one who needs no introduction, I think I was watching a television show a couple days ago and they mentioned your name. Attorney Benjamin Crump. I don't remember what it was, but they said, well, you don't want Ben Crump to have to come out on this one. And I was like, oh, I love how they invoked his name in that way. Brother Ben Crump, I'm calling you Brother Ben Crump because I'm grateful to have been in community with you as well. We need people in all spaces, in legal spaces, in advocacy spaces, in family spaces, in political spaces, to struggle for justice for Black people. And you've been one of the most stalwart freedom fighters. And so I'm grateful to you. I think we first met when Black Lives Matter was born, because we were born, of course, we inherited struggle. And one of the things that Uncle Bobby and I often talk about is Oscar Grant's murder, the theft of his life, and the uprising was really the precursor to Black Lives Matter. But life was breathed into Black Lives Matter, and we began officially as Black Lives Matter when Trayvon Martin's life was stolen in Florida. And of course, you were the attorney for Trayvon's family, and we came to know each other that way. So I'm going to stop talking because I'm talking too much. I just want to say thank you all for joining us. And I'm wondering if we might begin with Oscar Grant's mother, minister, sister, powerful freedom fighter, Sister Wanda Johnson. Oscar was killed January 1st, 2009. And we are continuing to struggle for justice in his name. Can you tell us why? Can you tell us why we have to continue this fight and really what it means to struggle for justice in the name of your son, Oscar Grant?
Thank you again for having me on the show today. I am just, always my birthday again is December 31st, and Oscar was killed January 1st. And I always start with there because that was my baby boy, and he didn't deserve to be killed, and yet he was killed. And so 12 years later, we're still struggling to get justice or a measure of justice that should have occurred when he was first killed. The officer who instigated the whole situation was never charged. We were told that he would be charged later, but they wanted to use him as a witness. And 12 years later, it still has not happened. And so we are, myself, my family, and the community that surrounds us are fighting for justice to occur. We are sure and aware that Oscar did not deserve to die. He did not deserve to be shot and killed, and yet he was for no reason. And so I will continue, my family will continue to fight for justice, not just for Oscar, but those who are losing their lives unjustly by this society. We will continue to wrap our arms around the families. We will continue to impart as much knowledge as we can of how the court systems handled our case and how they can go through the court system as well. And so I always share that, the race isn't given to the swift nor to the strong, but to the one who endures. And so this race of ensuring that accountability is once and for all recognized by all and officers are held accountable. This race will continue until I'm no longer here. I have been put on this plight by God to fight and to lift up my voice as a trumpet. And I will continue to do that until I cannot speak anymore. And I will do that not just for Oscar, but for those other young men and women who lose their lives unjustly. And so I always say to people, don't wait until someone knocks on your door. You can join in the fight of equal rights for all people right now, today. Don't just sit here and listen to our conversations that we'll be having on today, but as you hear the conversations, be moved within your spirit to act on the conversations and to fight for what is right. And we all deserve equal rights in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Wanda. And one of the things that comes up and that you've said, right, is that this is a struggle for justice in the name of Oscar Grant. Of course, real justice would mean having him here with us. But in the name of Oscar Grant, and we're grateful, you've met my children, that I'm a mother of three, and I feel so indebted to you. Because your willingness to struggle is really about making the world safer for those who are still with us. So my son and my daughters become safer because of your struggle and your commitment to get justice in the name of your son. And so I'm grateful and indebted to you, and just so grateful to also know you and be in the midst of your spirit. Uncle Bobby, can you also, you know, I think everyone should know what happened to Oscar Grant. Everyone should know that Johannes Messerly, because of your activism, because of your voice, and I mean your collective voices, right? We were able to get a conviction, to get Johannes Messerly minimal time, but he was actually prosecuted. But there were two officers who were involved in the theft of Oscar Grant's life. Can you just give us the short version of what happened to Oscar Grant and what this lingering and continued call for justice really is about?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Milena, again, as my sister stated, for having us on your show and be able to talk about this struggle that we've been in for the last 12 years concerning the murder of Oscar Grant. And so, you know, we are just overjoyed to have this opportunity because this struggle is still going on. What happened on January 1st, 2009, as you know, Oscar was murdered by Johannes Messerly. But the officer that was on the platform before Johannes Messerly murdered Oscar, Tony Perrone, called Oscar a bitch ass nigga 3 times right before he was murdered, committed 7 felonies on that platform before Oscar was murdered. This all can be reviewed in the Myers-Nave report, the investigative file of this law firm, Myers-Nave, that investigated what happened to Oscar on that platform. And even in this investigative file, it states that Tony Perrone is the reason why Oscar was murdered. He basically punched Oscar. He did a running kick on Oscar. He pushed his head against the concrete wall, causing brain damage to Oscar. He put his 250-pound self on Oscar's back, his knee on his neck, the exact same position that George Floyd was in, Oscar was in, saying, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." He put his hands on Oscar's face while his knee was on his neck, pushing his face through the concrete floor, fracturing the bones in his face. And of course, as you know, Johannes Messerly then stands up and shoots Oscar in the back and then say he thought he was reaching for a gun. That was the initial statement. So of course, the community rose up and we were able to get Johannes Messerly charged. Tony Perrone and all of them involved in the case. However, when the trial started, the district attorney stated that they wanted to use Tony Perrone as state evidence against Johannes Messerly because Johannes Messerly now claiming that he made a mistake with his weapon confusion by pulling his gun instead of his taser. And in essence, he had stated that he thought Oscar had a gun, and Tony Perrone was to help us elevate that point where he failed. He became a hostile witness, and he never testified to the fact that Johannes Messerly intended to kill Oscar. And so David Stein, our district attorney, stated that he will, we would have to get Tony Perrone after we complete the trial with Johannes Messerly. Okay, so when the trial ended with Johannes Messerly, we went to District Attorney Nancy O'Malley and stated that we wanted charges filed on Tony Perrone because he's the reason why Oscar was murdered. And she stated, District Attorney Nancy O'Malley stated that because of the trial being moved to LA, they didn't have the money to proceed to file charges against Tony Perrone at this time. And of course, Tony Perrone, knowing that that possibility lingered, decides to go into the military. He stays in the military for approximately 3 to 4 years. For what we know, he comes back between 2014 and 2015. We're not sure the exact time period because it's all right now still been hidden from us. But he's a state prosecution. So the Myers-Nave report comes out because, as you know, we campaigned for SB 1421. Gave us the right to ask for the public investigative files of these officers that create these acts. So Johannes Messerly's file, which I made the request for. And embedded in that file, 10 pages is specific to Tony Perrone and what he did on that platform. And even the investigative law firm Myers-Nave states that Tony Perrone basically was the reason why Oscar was murdered, talked about the 7 felonies he committed, talked about the brutalization, the racial epithets, the bitch ass nigga, everything about what happened. And yet Tony Peroni has not been charged. And so with that renewed evidence and the murdering of George Floyd, us as a family, the coalition of community said it's time for Tony Peroni to be arrested. And so we made the demand. And while we made the demand that the case be reopened, Nancy O'Malley, District Attorney Nancy O'Malley, reopens the case. So the case is reopened. Now the demand is for her to charge Tony Peroni with felony murder of Oscar Grant. There's no reason why she can't, because the evidence is there. The video is there. His own personal testimony is there. His line in an investigative report is all documented. This is all written. So we have an officer who is possibly working for another policing agency somewhere in the state of California or across this country. No one knows where he's at. And it's possible he's working for a policing agency that carries that spirit of egregious abuse of people of color. And so it's our outcry that we take this madman off the streets before he kills, if he hasn't already done it, kill another person of color. So it's our sincere hope that the community can hear, work with us to bring this man before the criminal trial to stand for what he did, and that is the murder of Oscar Grant. So that's the backdrop, you know, and of course, I'm gonna say this, you know, all the listeners and those that are listening, you can go to justiceforoscargrant.com, sign that petition and share it with your friends, because it's going to take public pressure to get Nancy O'Malley to charge him for felony murder.
So justiceforoscargrant.com, there is a live petition at justiceforoscargrant.com. People always ask, what can I do? You can do this right now, even as you're listening to This Is Not a Drill, watching This Is Not a Drill. Open a new window, go to justiceforoscargrant.com and sign and then share that petition. That kind of action does work. It does work. Again, we need to engage in many, many ways. Attorney
Before
Benjamin
you go to Attorney Crump, I just wanted to say that we have a dream team set of attorneys. We have, of course, Attorney Crump, Attorney John Burrs, Attorney Charles Bonner, Attorney Walter Riley, Attorney Judge Hackett, Hatchett. Did I say her name right, Wanda?
Hatchett.
Hatchett. I'm sorry. And Avery Martin, CNN legal analyst. You know, all these have looked at these files and saw that there's no reason why Tony Peroni should not be charged. So I just want the listeners to know that there's an investigative file that you can read yourself. It's public information. Read it.
So let's bring in one of your dream team attorneys.
Yes, let's bring him in.
Let's bring in Attorney Crump, because I think for many viewers, we're asking, we remember the theft of Oscar Grant's life again, which was one of the first recorded murders that we've seen, really was the precursor to the Black Lives Matter movement. We remember him being violently and racially targeted, and then again, you know, dehumanized and his life be stolen. We remember that, but that seems like so long ago when we talk about January 1st, 2009. How could it take this long? We saw that there were 2 BART police that stole his life. How could it take this long for us to be now calling for charges or be open to charging Tony Peroni? How could he have gotten away with murder for 12 years? And is it viable that we're able to call for charges now?
Well, first of all, it's such an honor to be with you, Queen. Listening to you talk about the movement inspires me all over again. So I'm so happy that we'll be with Black Lives Matter LA, and to Wanda and Uncle Bobby and Minister Savant. It is a calling that you all have been on for the past almost 12 years now. And really, it is landmark what they are doing Sister Melina, because to be able over a decade later to have charges be brought is something that is extraordinary. It is out of the ordinary. And it is, first off, a testament to your conviction to never let Oscar Grant's legacy die. That's first and foremost. I'm honored to work with all these great lawyers, these mostly California lawyers, and I understand so clearly what Uncle Bobby was saying. We have to have people sign those petitions because this could be done in all the cases, but nobody has the courage to do it, especially not these district attorneys who have this symbiotic relationship with the police and are petrified of police unions. They are bought and sold by police unions. And therefore, what you have to have is this court of public opinion victory to just get a chance to make the prosecutor have the courage to stiffen up their back to go do justice. I mean, and we're not asking for anything special. When you look at the video of Oscar Grant, it is one of the most horrific executions ever in the history of American policing. And that's saying a mouthful because we know the police throughout history was just like the KKK. But what they did to Oscar Grant, it's just unbelievable. And the fact that if we get this right, if with the public opinion victory, then this can open the door for so many others who justice has evaded, like Jonathan Crawford, like Tamir Rice, like, Sandra Bland, Terrence Crutchett, so many of them who never had that day in court, like Eric Gardner. I mean, and so this is how, when I sit here and I'm on the East Coast tonight and it's late, but it's one of those things when I hear Uncle Bobby's passion, when I hear Sister Wanda's passion, it motivates you to say, you have to do something. You cannot listen to the execution of Oscar Grant and be comfortable in your soul. You can't do it. And so even though you may be overworked and you don't have, no more energy, think about what Uncle Bobby and what his mother, Wanda Johnson, are feeling. So it's a legal argument, and I can break down the legal aspects of it, but I think Uncle Bobby broke it down beautifully, Sister Melina. But this is truly about everybody doing something. I mean, telling people about the petition, I know we got this COVID crisis going on, but when we have those court hearings or what have you, we need to flood the courtroom. They need to know that they're not going to be able to sweep this under the rug like they tried to do the first trial. And I know Uncle Bobby and Mother Wanda told me about that trial. And you know what, Melina, this is why you have to have it out in the public. Because if you don't continuously make it public, they'll get in a courtroom, they'll close that door, and they will sweep your child's death under the rug so fast it'll make your head spin. And if the people haven't been going on the journey for justice with you, they won't really know about the miscarriage of justice. So we have to first engage our people, educate our people, and then do what you do, Queen Abdullah, since I've known you, empower our people, because we have the power to make this district attorney provide equal justice. We ain't talking about something special. Equal justice, the same thing. If Oscar Grant would have been a young white man, that's what we want her to do, because we know without a shadow of a doubt, a police did that to a young white boy, he would be not only facing involuntary manslaughter, it would be murder, and he would be in prison for life. No questions asked. And if you don't believe me, you look at the statistics on death row. I mean, the quickest way to get to death row in America, two ways: to be a person of color and kill a white person. That's number one. The second quickest way to get to death row is to be a person of color and be accused of killing a white person. And so the police even know they shoot first, ask questions later with black people, but the law, the courtrooms, they're like E.F. Hutton. When they talk, people listen, and they don't have to say a word, just their actions alone say it all. When a white person kill a black person, they know that there's no guarantee that that person will even be arrested. There's no guarantee that person is going to go to prison or get on death row. They can say stand your ground or self-defense, and they have a 0.500% chance of their self-defense argument being sustained versus a black person killing a white person making the same arguments with the same facts. So this is what this struggle is about. It is a struggle for equal justice. And the last thing I'll say, because we can't forget the craziness, Minister Sabar, what happened in America yesterday at the Capitol. When you think of Oscar, when you think of Jacob Blake Jr., when you think of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all of them try to say they felt in fear. They felt threatened. That's why they had to kill these unarmed black people, most of them running away with their backs to them or face down with their backs to them. But then you saw all of these white people charging at them with flags and weapons, and nobody was being shot and killed. But yet all these innocent people like Oscar Grant, you felt a threat and you ended their life. And so we have to hold them accountable, and we can never ever stop speaking truth to power. I probably went over my time, Queen Abdullah, and I apologize, but sometimes, you know, you just have to connect the dots from
That's
the
right.
present.
No, that was all so powerful, and you hit on so many points that I want to jump in on and amplify, especially the refusal of district attorneys to prosecute police. And we're making some headway, right? In places like Los Angeles, we were able to vote in someone who's absolutely pushing for progressive justice reform and has worked with Black Lives Matter and the families of those who were killed by police, now reopening cases. I think about 2009, I think about people like Sister Helen Jones, whose son, John Horton, was beaten to death inside Men's Central Jail. And now we have an opportunity to re-examine that case. And so I think that it's really important that we think about that, you know, 12 years or not, we have to continue to struggle for justice, and we have to take every opportunity to push for not just reforms around unjust systems, but for transformation that remembers that the people have the most power. The people, especially when we're fueled by a creator, when we're joined together cohesively, when we work together collectively, we have the power to transform things. We always say when we fight, we win. And when we think about the struggle for justice in the name of Oscar Grant, you know, we always think about the work that Minister Sabor has been doing. And I'd love for you to jump in about why you've been so involved for such a long period of time. We know that we had to do organizing both in the Bay Area, and then when the trial for Messerly moved down to Los Angeles, we had to do work here. And Uncle Bobby and Sister Wanda made this kind of a global effort, but you've been at the forefront of this advocacy work. Can you talk about the importance of everybody recognizing that Oscar Grant is our brother, Oscar Grant is our son, our nephew too?
Thank you very much. And I'm very much honored to do what I can to help in the journey of justice. A phrase that I learned from Los Angeles attorney Johnny Cochran, who said that in his writing that the college I went to had a football player by the name of Ron Settles at Long Beach State, who was killed by the Signal Hill Police Department, and it helped Johnny Cochran hone in and focus his career. He came to the Bay Area and would share with me his book, and his heart and his feeling, his passion stuck with me. Why did we get involved in the murder of Oscar Grant? It's not because we knew him personally, but Oscar Grant is a Black man. And every one of us on this screen are Black. And before we can find reasons to be different, we have every reason to be the same. We are now one day, actually to this day, this is the anniversary of the day that we met with the district attorney in Alameda County, Tom Orloff. It's also the day of the funeral of Brother Oscar. Before we met his family, I believe Sister Beatrice went to the funeral on our behalf, but we sat with the district attorney with a team of elected officials, clergy leaders, students, activists, those who felt the pain of Wanda without ever having met Wanda. Why did we feel her pain? It's because at root, we are one people. And as soon as we start thinking ourselves to be different, we are weakened. So how did we find the capacity to charge the district attorney to do the right thing? Well, the answer is love for self and love for one another. Love and the unity that it generates produce the power to change the reality for that district attorney. His final act as district attorney in Alameda County was to charge Oscar Grant, and he swiftly got out of office. And he would be replaced by the current sitting district attorney, Nancy O'Malley, who carried the case to its conclusion. However, at the conclusion of that case, with our community united and strong, we had many elements with us at that time that only God could bring. We didn't know that we had in Oakland the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus, the chairman of the State Black Caucus, the leader of the Black elected officials and faith-based leaders being Supervisor Keith Carson, Assembly Member Sandra Swanson, and Congresswoman Barbara Lee, and had as mayor the legendary Congressional Black Caucus former leader, our brother, may God be pleased with, the Honorable Ron Dellums. Well, when we put all these elements together, by the day we met with the DA and they were at the table with us in unity and following the guided lead of the people, I appreciate what Attorney Burris, Johnny Cochran, our brother Crump, and the attorneys do, but their cases are what you call civil cases. When you're talking about criminal law, it says that the people versus Messerly, the people versus Peroni, the people of the state versus this one or that one that is charged with the crime. But as Attorney Crump has said, district attorneys don't tend to represent the people well, not when law enforcement officers are accused of crimes. And DA Orloff told us when we met with him that they have a special relationship with law enforcement, so that whenever a cop is charged with a crime, their protocols to address those subjects are different from how they address a subject if I'm accused of murder or you are accused of murder. And we just lit into him. And by the time we were done, he said he was considering what he might do, but what he didn't calculate was the unity of the people with then Mayor Ron Dellums, who the very next day, Mayor Dellums held a press conference with Attorney Orloff to announce his consideration of charges against Johannes Messerly, something that the community asked him to do, but he didn't respect the voices of those that he commonly disrespected. But when Mayor Dellums added his voice, when Congresswoman Lee added her voice, when Sandra Swanson, Assembly Member, added his voice, when the leading clergy of the city added their voices, then the DA, coupled with the activism, by the way, that was rolling through the streets of Oakland and had taken over downtown Oakland. Well, the mayor told the DA, you need to have this press conference with me as a matter of public safety. we got to say to the world what our intentions are. So you can't sit on this. Well, thankfully, he acquiesced, and a week later, Johannes Messerly was charged. However, we had to drag the DA into the courtroom. And there were times during that trial, as Mr. Stein did the best he could, but I could tell you, I'm sitting in my seat chomping at the bit. Hand me the stick. I can tell you how to challenge Peroni. I have it in my head because we studied that case as carefully as any could. And by the way, we're here again because they studied the case. In the Myers-Nave report, in addition to, BART also hired the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives to study their case as well. This case has been studied 4 times, at least. It's been studied by the district attorney that brought charges on Messerly. It's been studied by the internal affairs of BART Police. It's been studied by the Myers-Nave report. And it's been studied by the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives. The DA is acting today as though she needs time to study the case. She doesn't need time to study the case. She saw what we all saw. Let me say in closing, Oscar's case, of course, made history, but we didn't respond to it as a victory. When we left the courtroom, there was relief that there was a guilty verdict. We'd been in court a long time. It allowed us to breathe. But I can tell you, Sister Melina, we got out of LA as fast as we could. We stopped at my mom's house, changed clothes, got a cup of coffee, and hit the highway. We didn't want to stick around so that if law enforcement had an exciting night, they weren't going to have it on our behalf. We made our way back home to enjoy the peace of our families, but we knew that this case wasn't over. One day in a community rally, I heard Wanda, I think, sing for the first time a duet with Sister Beatrice. And they rolled together in and out of the courtrooms and on the highways. I was in a separate vehicle when I was traveling with them. And they sang a song. And I think it went something like, "It ain't over until God says it's over." Mother Wanda can help me with the gospel lyric. But when they sang that song, this is long after the verdict was done and we knew we weren't satisfied with what we came out of Los Angeles with. Tears rolled down my face because it caused me to reflect and remember that we had not yet secured justice. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that that mother and her son will be the winner. So we're still fighting. The game is not over. Anthony Peroni has been walking the streets free without charge. Oscar's is not the first murder case to be videotaped, but it is the first to hit social media and the way it was handled by the cell phone footage. There were more than 30 videotapes of that case. Well, there's a book that you may teach with in your class called Lynching Photography, Without Sanctuary, Lynching Photography in America. It has a web page attached to it. And you see the countless lynchings of Black people with white folks standing around laughing and barbecuing and enjoying themselves, taking pictures of those that they killed and celebrating their death. And so Oscar's is one of the first to make it into a courtroom for criminal trial. We want to bring it back and send the message around the world to all those cops in all those other cities that you cannot continue as you're going and expect that the community is going to sit back and allow it to happen and not do all that we can to bring the power of the unity of the people to ensure that criminal charges are brought. So justiceforoscargrant.com. Sign the petition.
justiceforoscargrant.com. Sign and share the petition. And remember that it does take all of us. We want to lift up that if you are watching on Facebook, and we have thousands of folks who've already, who have been a part of our Facebook audience tonight, If you have questions, thoughts, ideas, please drop them in the comments. We do have Sister Rajay and Megan and Kim and others monitoring those comments and feeding them to me so that we can ask questions. One of the things that's coming up, and that I talked with Sister Wanda and that Attorney Crump also kind of mentioned, is that when we think about what happened yesterday, when we think about the violent white supremacist siege, the attempted coup on the Capitol of the United States, and the restraint with which those white supremacists were met by law enforcement, we don't want to hear it, not ever again, that they're somehow justified in stealing life. Oscar Grant wasn't doing anything when his life was stolen by people who were supposed to be upholding the law. And so we need to be very clear about that. And I think that I'd love to have Sister Wanda kind of weigh in and just, if you can offer, some of what we discussed before we began broadcasting about this positioning of both restraint, but also deference to white supremacy versus the dehumanization of Black life, including the life of your son, Oscar Grant. Can you just offer some thoughts about what you saw yesterday and why that should renew our call for justice in Oscar Grant's name?
What I watched yesterday clearly tells me, and it should tell this nation, that there is a difference, that there is a separation, that Black people are treated differently than white people. When I watched yesterday and I saw how a building is supposed to be guarded, and how a set of Caucasian people can just run into that building, climb up a wall, break windows, sit in chairs, put their feet on desks, carry a podium, and yet nothing happened to them. The way they walked in, they was able to walk out. And when I think about my son, Oscar, how he was riding a BART train on his way back from San Francisco, and he was killed laying on a cold cement floor or ground with his face forced and pinned to the concrete, telling the officer, I have a 4-year-old daughter, telling the officers, I can't breathe. And yet the officer still stood up and shot him in his back. And looking at yesterday and seeing how people reacted so violently towards police, and yet they still was able to walk right out of the building like they had done nothing. When I look at all these other killings that has taken place, but an African-American young man being killed at the hands of police for nothing, for less than what we saw yesterday, and we have the police fearing for their life. I thought they were going for guns, and yet some of these people who went into the Capitol building had guns. Where was the metal detectors at? I looked at that and I watched some of the officers just open the barricade up and let them right on in. And yet I look at how our young people, our young men who have been killed at the hands of police have not fought back. The many of the cases that I've seen have been, some have walked away and some were running away and still lost their life. And yet we look at today and we look at television, how even the media has downplayed it so very much. But yet when it was Oscar and other African-American young men, they had prior records. They were smoking weed. They got suspended from school. They had all these things listed of what our young African-American young men had did, or what they thought they had did, how they demonized them. But yet, when we see this terrorist attack, because it was not a protest, let's get that straight, this terrorist attack taking place, we still wanted to downplay it as the media and really not talk about what they did. And then to hear that only 52 people got arrested is just ludicrous. When Oscar was killed, more than 52 people got arrested, you know,
Downtown Oakland.
and some of those people was doing absolutely less than what these people we saw doing yesterday. And yet they were still arrested here in Oakland, but yet at the Capitol, a building a building that is so secure and so protected, yet they were still able to get into that building and do what they go into offices. And that tells me that they already knew where the offices were and they knew exactly what they were doing. And that tells us a lot about our country. And it tells us the disparity that African American people are still facing on today, because when we look at what happened yesterday, and we look around this nation and we look at the killing of Mike Brown, we look at the killing of Eric Garner, we look at the killing of Philando Castile, my son Oscar, and so many other, John Crawford, and so many others, those young men didn't do a fraction as to what we saw yesterday, and they lost their lives. But these other people was able to walk home to their families, and many of them didn't get arrested and will not get arrested. So, you know, it just shows me that Lady Liberty is out of balance, that Black people are still being treated unfairly in this country. It has not changed. Yes, it has went from the water hose and the dogs, but it now is killing, and it's justifiable each and every time. So it just makes and puts a fight and a drive in me more to continue to sound the trumpet and to continue to let people know, don't wait until somebody comes and knocks on your door and tell you that your child has been killed by the police. You can do something right now. And one of the things that you can do is what we're asking is to sign that petition, to join with us in this fight, as we not only fight for my son, but we're going to take this across the country. When we see that we get the victory in this area for my son, we're going to take it across the country and fight for other families like we're doing locally here, to ensure that this does not continue to happen. And until we begin to hold police accountable for killing Black young men, we will continue to see them getting killed. But we got to, as a people, come together and fight this battle. It does not matter what your religion is. We are a people of color, and we have to come together as one, because two can do more than just one. And when we're all together and we're fighting to end this this segregation that we're facing as a people, we could change the system. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're running a little short on time, but one of these comments that's coming in on Facebook actually speaks to one of the things that you were raising, Attorney Crump, when you talked about, they call themselves unions, but they're police associations, they're protective leagues, they are, you know, organized crime in some ways, right? They are the opposite. I'm a member of a labor union, and we organize on behalf of working class people. You know, police associations only organize around their narrow self-interests. Can you talk about, because as we hear Sister Wanda, as we hear Uncle Bobby, as we hear Minister Sabor talk, it's hard to imagine that anyone would be on the opposite side. Can you talk about who our opposition is and what role police associations play in that?
Certainly. And I wrote this book, Legalized Genocide of Colored People. You have to understand the white supremacy hierarchy that was established when this country was founded. and certainly the first police were the slave patrol. And in many ways, they were there to keep the status quo, to keep the people who they thought should be oppressed, and the people who they thought should be uplifted in society, uplifted. And it was controlled by all the governmental interests, the corporate interests, the educational interests in the community. And it is literally, when you think about it, the police union is supported not just by the police, but all of these industries, these corporations that thrive off of the prison industrial complex. Because you got to remember, we fought the Civil War and we won the Civil War, but most corporations were not able to divorce themselves from this notion of free labor, this slave labor, this slave wage labor where you get 6 cents an hour to go do all these labor for Walmart, for Victoria's Secrets. I mean, everybody uses prison labor in corporate America. So you really have to understand this hierarchy why they allow things to happen, because America became one of the most prosperous nations, if not the most prosperous nation in the world, based on slavery and cotton and the labor of Black people for free. And so, still to this day, America, I believe, equates their prosperity in the global economy to having the benefit of this free labor. And that's why you have this mass incarceration. And when you think about it, police brutality is something that they accept as a collateral damage to the ultimate goal of capitalism. So they give the police great power to go do all this stuff. And the unions who deal these contracts with the city every term. And that's why I'm so proud of what you all are doing in Los Angeles, Melina, because you elected this DA and you're empowering the people. Now we have to start picking off every one of those city council men and women who make this contractual agreement with the union to put all these protections in for police who perform these extrajudicial killings of marginalized people of color. And so that the union is a contract. It is a contract. People have to remember you can break those contracts or they come up renewed every other year or so. And you starting to see that now in Minneapolis in the killing of George Floyd. And hopefully we will see more people find the power to say, we don't have to submit to the union. Now, white people, I would say, most of them do support the union. They support this notion that we have to have the police because they say that, you know, these people of color are thugs, they nefarious, they criminals, all this kind of stuff. So it's been embedded in their mind that we have to support the police to stay safe from them. But it's all a facade. It's really about capitalism. It's really about money. It's really about these corporations being able to have this school to prison pipeline be uninterrupted.
So again, you continue to speak to why we have so much love and respect for you, Attorney Crump. Thank you for breaking things down in that way. We're coming up on the end of the show, and we just want to invite Uncle Bobby and Minister Sabor to offer just quick closing comments about what we can do to support. So again, give us the petition link. The petition link has also been dropped on the Facebook page, so people can just click it. But anything else that you'd like us to do?
Yes. I think the big question is, if not now, when? Oscar's mother, Wanda, deserved justice. We know Oscar deserved justice. And as we know, as Attorney Crump will say, it takes public pressure to bring about real systemic change. If we unify our voices and all sign that petition, I'm talking about millions, what we will see is a change of Nancy O'Malley filing felony murder charges against Tony Peroni for the murder of Oscar Grant. JusticeForOscarGrant.com or JusticeForOscarGrant.org. Either one will take you to the petition, sign it, share it, and let's get the numbers so that we can put public pressure on Nancy O'Malley to charge Tony Peroni.
Absolutely. Minister Sabor, any last comments?
Yes, we are activists in the Bay Area and all over the country, but I'm reminded, I think, of the words of Frederick Douglass, who said, we can be separate as the finger, but we got to be one as the hand. And we are so honored to be able to call on Attorney Crump and call on Minister Rashidullah in San Francisco, call on Minister Abdul Malik in Los Angeles, and all over the country. Activists need to find our voice and our strength. And our voice and in our strength is in our effort to unite. We should now look at this case as one of the great cases that can help set precedent for cases all over the country. And once we win one, we intend to win them all. But we got to start with the ones that are right here in front of us. It's not that it's 12 years ago. We were kidnapped in 1555 or 1619, however you see that. But we're still fighting for our justice for those causes today. The faster we grow in unity, the more effective we'll be able to fight. Where two or more go in my name, God is in the midst of us. Well, let it be in the millions, and then we know God is with us.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Amen. So we just want to thank you all. We want to thank Uncle Bobby. Thank you, Attorney Crump. Thank you, Sister Wanda. Thank you, Minister Sabor, for joining us. Everyone who's watching This Is Not a Drill, we want to remind you that This Is Not a Drill was initiated because we are in a state of emergency as Black people. And the way in which we navigate this emergency will tell us where we go. And so we have to all be engaged in this fight. We have to fight and struggle in the name of Oscar Grant. You can go to JusticeForOscarGrant.com, JusticeForOscarGrant.com. As Black Lives Matter, we're going to continue to email out that petition link both locally and globally, so we make sure that we get everybody who can to sign on. Please do your part. Also, please join us on Sunday for our general meeting, Sunday at 7 p.m. right here on Facebook.com/BLMLA. Join us right here on this platform as we talk about We Keep Us Safe. We Keep Us Safe. How to build community safety responses, community safety plans to make sure that in the midst of all of this white supremacist terrorism, we remember that we have each other, that we struggle for justice, and when we fight, we win. I want to thank Pro Bono ASL. Thank you, Dresden. Thank you, Gregorio, for signing for us tonight for Language Justice Tonight. We're so grateful to partner with you in everything. Thank you so much to Megan and Rajay for running the tech aspects. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we, inshallah, will see you next week right here on This Is Not a Drill. Thank you so much, everyone.